Nebraska will take on Colorado this Saturday in one of the biggest games of the year. So in today's video, I'm joined with a special guest, Julian Wolf, our Colorado expert, and we're going to go over our 5 key players, not only for the Huskers, but for the Buffaloes in order for either team to win this ball game. So Julian, thanks for joining me today on the show. And I want to start it off with you. Who is your number 1 key player that Nebraska fans should be watching out for in Saturday's matchup?
First of all, thanks for having me on. I think starting it off, we'll go with the obvious one. It's Shedeur Sanders is kind of he's the head of our offense. He's the head of our team. It's kind of on him. He in the first half in last year's game, he struggled, but in the second half he was able to go 17 for 21, kind of dice that Nebraska defense apart. He had an incredible week 1 against North Dakota State. If we want to win this game, we're going to need a good game from him and him to be in control and to lead the Buffs to a victory.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about your quarterback. I'll talk about our quarterback right off the rip, Dylan Raiola. And that's what I think is the big difference in this year's matchup in comparison to last year's matchup. When Colorado beat the Huskers in Boulder last year, Nebraska had one of the worst quarterbacks in all of Power 5 football, Jeff Sims. They're going from one of the worst to one of the most talented in Dylan Raiola. Of course, he had a great game versus UTEP in his first performance. And yeah, this is the biggest test he's played so far. But I believe that he's going to rise up to the expectations. I mean, has about as good of an arm talent as anybody else in America, and hopefully he puts that on display. So you talked about your quarterback. Dylan is up there for my key player for the Huskers. And again, he's going to be huge if Nebraska wants to win this ball game. Yes, it's all about running the football down Colorado's throat, but Dylan Raiola, we've got to utilize his arm, and I think that's how we get it done. Your second player.
I'd say, obviously Dylan is such a threat. You watch that UTEP game, you can't give him time to throw because he has the arm to put it anywhere on the field, and he has the receivers now to complement him. So I think what's really important for us is our pass rush. So I'm going to give 2 guys on our defensive line, BJ Green and Deion Hayes. These are 2 edge rusher guys brought in from the transfer portal. Deion Hayes from Pittsburgh, BJ Green from Arizona State. BJ Green was a second-team All Pac-12 last year. These 2 guys, they're going to need to get home, give the Nebraska tackles some issues. I know, Corcoran kind of struggled in last year's matchup a little. I think it's going to be important that we attack him. Don't let Raiola get comfortable and really kind of keep the pressure up all game long.
Yeah, those are some good players to mention, especially with Nebraska's offensive line, which is still a little bit of a question mark, and you want Dylan Raiola to be protected. If Colorado can get to him a couple times, Nebraska fans might be a little bit worried. But I'm going to go to my second key player for the Huskers. This is in the secondary. This is Marquise Buford. So there's going to be no surprise in what Colorado's doing on offense. They're going to try to throw it all day long with Shedeur to guys like Jimmy Horn, Travis Hunter, LeJontay Wester. So we need a guy like Marquise Buford to step up, especially at that cornerback 2 spot. We know Tommy Hill will be good, but we need him to play good as well because this is a big tester for the secondary. If you want to beat Colorado, you just got to slow down their pass attack just a little bit, make them run. If Marquise Buford can have a good game, because we know Tommy Hill will, it'll be in good spirits for the Huskers. So I have my eyes on him along with basically every player in this secondary. So that's my second big player for the Huskers. Let's go to your third player for the Buffaloes.
My third guy, I'm going to cheat again here and give like a couple 2 guys, but in the same position group. I'm going to go Hank Zielinskis, our center, and Jordan Seaton, our left tackle. These are 2 young guys. Hank Zielinskis is a true sophomore. Jordan Seaton's a true freshman. They don't have a ton of experience, especially, in getting starting reps. Jordan Seaton looked incredible last game against North Dakota State. That's what I was most worried about going to the game. He's going against some grown, 6-year men at North Dakota State with full beards, and he held up his own. He on 41 pass attempts, he didn't allow a sack, only allowed 2 pressures. But Hank Zielinskis did struggle a little. He was getting pushed back, getting into the backfield, giving up some pressures. He didn't grade out well by PFF, and I'm worried about him going against Nash Hutmaker, and especially with the noise and the crowd and these 2 guys with not a ton of starting experience. It's going to be on them when Nebraska throws their simulated blitzes and you don't know who's coming and you have to make those calls. And, if there's a false start, how do we adjust from that? So those guys protecting Shedeur is crucial for the Buffs to win.
Yeah, so I mentioned one quarterback for Nebraska, one defensive back for the Huskers. Now I'm going to go to the defensive line just because you talked about your offensive line. I think Nebraska is going to dominate that battle. And you mentioned him. Nash Hutmucker is my third impact player for the Huskers. Now, when I was watching that Colorado versus North Dakota State game, I thought the tackles held up very well. Jordan Seaton in your right tackle as well. I forget his name right now, but
Tyler
he didn't
Brown.
give up any single sacks. There you go, Tyler Brown. Believe he was your highest graded PFF lineman in that game. So yeah, I thought the tackles played well for Colorado. It was the interior that was an issue. So Nash is going to have a lot of opportunities to get to the quarterback, really take over the ball game. And I think this defensive line in general is going to feast for the Huskers. It's a veteran unit, very experienced, very deep. So guys like Nash, Ty Robinson, they have a real ability to get to Shador, get him on the ground a couple of times. And if you can make him scared in the pocket, man, you're just taking over already. And I feel like that's exactly what they're going to do. So that's my big third impact player for Nebraska. Let's get to your fourth for the Buffaloes.
I'm going to go back to the defensive side. I'm going to go Preston Hodge. I think it's really important. We talked about slowing down Raiola. I think it's really important for a guy like Preston Hodge, who's a defensive back for us, to be able to guard the receivers like Jalen Lloyd and Ja'Cory Barney. What CU has struggled with over the last 2 years, or in the North Dakota State game and then going back to last year, is keeping up with speedy receivers. We saw in the Colorado State game, they just kept running crossers and we just did not adjust, couldn't keep up with them. North Dakota State was having success with their 2-star receivers, just running crossers, kind of quick schemed up stuff to get them in space. And I was really high on Preston Hodge. We brought him over from Liberty this year. He was a top 10 graded, cornerback by PFF in the country. And I was really optimistic. And I did think he struggled a little in his first game under a new system, but I do have high hopes for him. And he's going to have a big game because, Nebraska has so much speed on the edges that, if one play breaks out, it could be over for us.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the offense for my fourth Nebraska key player. And this is in the backfield. Emmett Johnson, one of our running backs. I think he needs to take over this ball game, not only for the Huskers to win, but for him to establish himself as the starting running back for the rest of the season. This is going to be Nebraska's philosophy. Control the time possession, run the ball down Colorado's throat, and then have a big pass when Colorado starts to stack the box. In order to do that, a guy like Emmett Johnson needs to be consistent. He needs to be efficient. He needs to average about 4 or 5 yards a carry. I think he can do that. I expect him to have a big breakout game. Talking about a defensive line for Colorado that struggled a little bit in that week 1 matchup. So I'm looking a lot out for Emmett Johnson. Again, he needs to establish himself as Nebraska's starting running back going forward, and he needs to have a big day in order for the Big Red to get a victory. All right, we only have one more player, one for Colorado, one for Nebraska. Who is your last big key player in order for Colorado to win?
My final player, and obviously I could have mentioned Travis Hunter multiple times for receiver and cornerback, but I'm going to go with some more unique players. I'm going to go with Dallin Hayden, our running back, and kind of our run game as a whole. This year, the emphasis was, we heard all offseason, we're going to run the ball. We're not just going to be all throwing. And in week 1, it was not successful. First half, I thought we did all right, but then we started getting shut down. We finished the game averaging under 3 yards a carry. And at the end of the game, when we had the lead, when we were up with the ball with under 2 minutes left, we decided to pass it. I really want to see Dallin Hayden get carries throughout the game. Nebraska only has a 3 down, 3 defensive ends on the front. So you have to be able to run the ball, make sure linebackers commit. So then the play action starts working. You can work out of that. And if we do have a lead, you have to be able to run it and run out the clock to your success.
Yeah, that's a good point there. That's one thing about Colorado is that, again, the running game was not on display for North Dakota State. Really only had 2 guys in action. You mentioned one of them, and then the walk-on Offerdahl. So definitely need to get the running game going against Nebraska, especially if the Huskers have success in the secondary. All right, my last key player for the Huskers is going to be Isaiah Nair, wide receiver. He had a big day versus UTEP, had a big touchdown catch. Really athletic guy, 6'4", runs a 4.4. Has had a lot of success at Wyoming in the past. Of course, got banged up at Texas. Really didn't play for them, but super athletic. And Nebraska's wide receiver core is very, very good. He not only will Nair get involved, but guys like Jamal Banks, Jalen Lloyd, Janiran Bonner, Malachi Coleman, Ja'Cory Barney, true freshman. So I honestly think that Nebraska's wide receiver core can give Colorado some fits. Again, the secondary honestly played a little bit worse than what you would expect against North Dakota State. They gave up some big yardage. Of course, Travis Hunter had a good game, but I was surprised with how they performed against the Bison. I think Nebraska, especially with Dylan Ryle, they have an opportunity to not put up some points against this Buffalo defense. But I need Isaiah Nader to have a big day. And if he commands more attention defensively, then guys like Jamal Banks will get some more opportunities. So hopefully Isaiah Nader does that, and I think Nebraska will do just fine versus this Colorado defense. So Julian, thank you for giving me your 5 players for the Buffaloes. I'm going to wait to tell you or to tell everybody my score prediction until tomorrow's video, but I want you to give everybody what you think is going to happen. So Colorado, who wins? Colorado, Nebraska, tell us everything. Tell us your score prediction.
So after the North Dakota State game, I was feeling nervous. That wasn't, the result I wanted. I thought we were going to win by more, and I was going nervous. I'm like, Nebraska is definitely an upgrade over them if we struggled like that. But then as I've had a week to reflect on it, I'm starting to feel more and more confident. So my final prediction is Colorado 30, Nebraska 21. I just think we have one of the best receiving cores, and even when it looks sloppy, that was always the go-to. Our offensive line looked better. We saw last year we gave up 8 sacks and we still won in blowout. And what I was most impressed about was our run defense. That was something that was a massive weakness for us last year. We ended up finishing the game at giving up 3.6, 3.7 yards a carry. But if you take away the quarterback runs from Cam Miller, we only allowed 2.8 yards a carry, which is impressive. If you would have told me that before the game, I would have definitely taken that. So I know Nebraska can run the ball. They did that really well against UTEP, but I do like our matchups. I do like our pass rushers. I just think Shedeur is a lot better than Raiola at this point of time, and I like it. But I'm nervous. It's going to be a rough environment. We got a lot of inexperienced guys, but I am very excited. But I do think 30-21 Colorado.
I think that's a fair assessment, and I've told my viewers this. If Nebraska loses this football game, it's because of one or two reasons. Number one, Shedeur Sanders has a field day, and you can't slow down that passing attack, just like what happened last year. Or number two, you can't establish a running game. You can't basically control the tempo of the ball game. So I think if that happens and you can't do either of those things, Colorado should beat Nebraska again. But let's say Nebraska secondary has a good performance and you could start running the football down their throat. I think Nebraska wins handedly, but I'll wait to give my prediction tomorrow, but it was good to hear yours. And I knew you were going to pick the Buffaloes. That's good. I'll probably pick the Huskers. I'm feeling good about that matchup as well, but I'm excited to see it on Saturday. But all right, Julian, thanks for joining me on today's episode. Good luck to your Buffaloes on Saturday. I know you're going to be there. It's going to be an environment like we've never seen before. But all right, guys, let me know in the comment section below, who are your key players for Nebraska and the Buffaloes? If you made this far in the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And as always, folks, go Big Red, go Matt Rhule, and see you in the next one.